Alright guys, Kremp here again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far, and I've got to say the overwhelming emotion for me today is that of confusion. I simply do not understand how a team that was this capable and this dominant in many ways not that long ago has collapsed to these levels. OpTic's best performance they probably had with this roster of 4 this season, excluding back in December, was genuinely against FaZe. Their first series back they looked okay. Yes, they lost, but it wasn't completely tragic, and FaZe still a phenomenal team in the Call of Duty League. There was a feeling OpTic at that point would only kick on, they would only get better. But over the last few weeks, it genuinely only looks like they've got worse. I know the pressure must be getting to them individually, but some of the plays again we saw today, simply mind-blowing stuff, and OpTic look worlds away from even winning a map at the moment, let alone winning a series. Where do we, I don't understand. I don't understand. We've got loads to talk about today. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, because, yeah, I don't know. I'm lost for words, to be honest, genuinely. And it starts here, right, because the day gets underway, and OpTic are already getting cooked. And look, this is their doing. At the end of the day, this is their doing. If they weren't terrible, they wouldn't be getting cooked. It is what it is. If they're the best team in the game by far, they'd be getting praised endlessly. There'd be segments on how OpTic are crushing everyone, dominating every series. That's not what's happening. Here's Maven on the desk. I will say today, the desk was, I wouldn't say ambitious, but provocative, I would use the word of. And I think that's a great thing for the league. I know that there was plenty of people today saying, I actually tuned into the desk segments because they were stirring conversation. They had this whole hot takes segment before the show today, which in my opinion is exactly what they need to be doing. Whether you think it's controversial at home, getting these guys to give their thoughts, okay, fair enough, you'll have your perspective either way, but the desk segments need to be interesting, and, whether they're controversial or not. I've made that take a couple of weeks ago, and now the CDL are, doing something to that end, I guess. And today they decided to drop a drawing conclusions on OpTic, before OpTic obviously had even played their series of the day. Nameless was calling out OpTic, calling out Pred especially, really, and I will say, so many moments today, I don't know what Pred's thinking, I don't know what he's doing, at the end of the day, I don't know what exactly has chalked this OpTic team, but Pred has to carry a large amount of the weight, because whatever happened to him to force him to go back home to Australia, of course there are plenty of theories, he was involved in that to at least some capacity. He goes back to Australia, he comes back into the team, and they didn't have a good major, sure, with Hook, but they were the #1 seed after the qualifiers during Major 1. Right now, are they even going to make it to the World Championship? That is a genuine question that I have to ask, as outrageous as that feels. And ever since Pred's come back in, they've not made any strides at all. It doesn't feel like Pred's individual gameplay makes any more sense than it used to. This, of course, Pred was getting cooked for this play, just laying down at the corner here while his teammates are trying to take the chal above him. And then when Pred finally does activate, he gets one and then gets traded. Obviously people were calling out the broadcast for this and saying that it was a strange segment, but as Maven says, they haven't won a map, and something was said in a listening that we haven't heard in the history of the Call of Duty League. Toughen up, kid. And look, whatever you want to say, Octane called it a generational hate segment. It's, OpTic have opened themselves up to it by being terrible. That's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. And it's not just Kenny, it's not just Pred, it's not even just Dashy. I mean, even Shotzzy, I think Shotzzy is the player who I'd probably blame the least for this, but then again, after the tweets that he did in January, maybe they had it coming too to some extent. But look, Falcons played today. That would give them the record for the most losses in CDL history. OpTic are rapidly chasing them down, and that's what happened in the Falcons series. They actually could have won the Game 1 hardpoint in this series, Falcons. It looked like, well, it never looked to me like they were going to, because Falcons could go up 249-0 and I'd still feel like they would lose the hardpoint. They went up kind of big in this one. Inevitably, they lost. The Search and Destroy was a pretty rough one because Falcons had a big lead here, 4-2. It looked like they were going to close out the map at least, get to a Game 3, potentially put off a Neslo, something like that. This is a pretty bad gunfight here. Wixel gets first bullet in and then just whiffs left, right and centre. Priestahh gets the gunny, wins the round, and then shortly afterwards they win the game. Don't want to spend too much time on this series. I thought this was kind of outrageous, right? Falcons are at a point now where Dahoom's getting taken hostage and bent over by the wall while his entire team is still alive, right? We've seen this before in Search and Destroy, when maybe he's the last guy alive, or even in Control, for example, when the full team isn't left alive. But to do it when the full team is still alive, oh my god, man. That was rough to watch. And again, it's another map where Xnid is just the only man on the Falcons team doing anything at all, right? This guy is trying his best, but Dahoom and Wixel here were nowhere. So, you know, GG's, congratulations. They take the record off the Boston Breach with 16 straight series losses. We're roughly coming up on halfway through the season as far as these guys are concerned. And that does not look especially likely to change as it presently stands. As aBeZy though says, at Priestahh, at Snoopy, you know, finally the shackles have been unleashed. Falcons took the record away, no longer held by the Boston Bleach from last season. Snoopy was pretty happy about it. It's all I thought was kind of funny. And look, I don't want to really give Gentlemates any credit. They beat the Falcons. It was always going to happen, regardless of how bad they were. But they did swap the roles around. Priestahh to the sub. Okay, in Search and Destroy, it's a bit different. You can kind of run whatever. Lynz on the flex a little bit more. The second AR. That did seem to help matters to some degree. Whether that would help another team, it might be too far gone for that. But, you know, tweet your thoughts in the comments. This was the scoreboard. Lynz had a 1.4. King and Exon in the positives, but it didn't really matter at the end of the day. To be fair, it was closer than other series recently, but it was still a 3-0, so what really to say. This series was interesting. Miami played Surge. Not a great map one from Abuzah or Nastie. They had a pretty rough time on the protocol, and Heretics took the win. So look, Heretics, we know this, certainly online, and to be fair, on LAN as well at Madrid. They can mix it up with any team on a specific map. Whether they can take a series off them, I'm never so convinced. They lost the Search. They then lost the Control as well. They nearly brought this back here. They won a couple of rounds in a row, including an offense, but Surge got the defense. They finally closed that one out, and it was a relatively swift series. Not really too much to say here. I like both of these teams are in the spot where we know them to be. Heretics 2 and 3 as it stands. They just got the hot win over OpTic, but apart from that, not been looking great in this run of qualifiers. Given where some of the other teams are, Falcons, Gentlemates, OpTic, they, you know, might still be in an okay position to qualify for the winners bracket. Surge, they're working on their map pool. They should win series like this, and they did. I think the impressive thing for Surge on some level was that it's not like Neptune or Nastie, who have been their two best players lately, were gunning big time. It was 0-4 who had a good series. Abuzah turned it up towards the ends. But Neptune was, I mean, pacey, as always, but it's not like he has a generational series in terms of stats. He did have the most damage in the lobby, though, which is something that you would usually expect from a man that plays at this pace. Neptune even said on Twitter afterwards that he can play better than this, he knows he can, he wants to, and he thinks that he will be able to going forwards. But even if he doesn't, Surge is still capable of getting wins over these kind of middle pack teams, even without their star players taking over, which is, you know, maybe not ideal for Surge because you want your star players always firing. Certainly they'll need that if they want to go ahead and win the major in Dallas. But even if they're not, they can still be okay because their teamwork is so good and their pace is so high. That's something to take away. But, you know, let's talk about it. The elephant in the room. Here was Dashy. We didn't get Bandana Kenny today, but we did decide to get Hood Up Dashy. So, you know, Bruce was in the building. And, you know, how far they've fallen when you've got Bruce Chance hitting the chat when Dashy clutches. He didn't even clutch. It was a 2v1 and he shot JoeDeceives in the back. And there were Bruce Chance going down. It was, yeah, horrific. And I don't really know. Like, this is before the series began. This is the OpTic vibes. Like, you know, it ain't looking good. And a few moments in the map one that I just wanted to home in on. I mean, frankly, you could spend an hour breaking down all the mistakes that OpTic made in this map. And of course, it's easy to say in hindsight. But it really doesn't take a COD expert to understand why OpTic are so terrible right now in some respects. And, well, look, they don't trade anything. OpTic's biggest issue when they've been struggling, at times, like, OpTic have been in slumps before. When they're typically in a slump, they go into this mode of just chow, don't trade, you know, it's staggering and all this other stuff. This year it is like that, but it's just worse because they don't even know where to look half the time. The comms seem to be horrific. They don't call anyone out. They don't seem to know where people are going. People get lost in the source. I just don't really get it. I mean, this moment here, Insight manages just to sneak through the gap to the P4. I don't know how it was even really possible for him to make this happen, but it was a big rotation that eventually OpTic end up on the losing end of, really. And this was, I mean, look, OpTic at this point, they're only down 30 or so points. They're in the hill time. They've potentially got the rotation over to P2. This was, I mean, I usually watch Octane's streams because I love the crash outs. This was the first kind of frame of a pretty generational crash out. And look, we can criticize Pred for very good reason. We can criticize Kenny. Obviously, Shotzzy, none of these guys, Karma, JP, Hex even, maybe I don't even know. Like, none of these guys are immune from criticism in terms of the way that this has been handled as far as I'm concerned. But it's not like Dashy's off the hook, because this specific moment here, JoeDeceives gets one on Shotzzy in the hill, 3's in the back, 1's in the back. There's absolutely no way that Toronto can be anywhere else but the other side of the map here. But for some reason, Dashy decides to go... he doesn't challenge. JoeDeceives is half HP. All Dashy has to do is just hit the front, kill Joe. They turn around, they can get the time. But instead, Dashy waits. I mean, you guys can see it as it unfolds here in this clip. JoeDeceives comes in, gets one. Dashy's literally right there. Like, Dashy's literally on the left-hand side of your screen here. And he can just run in and trade it, but he doesn't. He hits the back. And by the time he turns around, Kenny's already dead. Like, how Kenny is the first child there? Like, look, Kenny is not playing good cards. He's YYing all the time, and it frustrates me to high heaven. I don't understand what I'm watching half the time. I don't know if it's like a nervous tick for Kenny that's got even worse because he's playing under so much pressure. Sure, I get it, but it's obviously affecting his gameplay as well. And then I mean, this moment, because OpTic actually had the possibility of a break here, and then somehow Shotzzy goes down, Dashy just doesn't trade, and by the time he thinks about it, Kenny's already dead, and Kenny's been left out to dry again. Okay, Kenny's just sliding it on his own with no trade, but I mean, oh my god, man. I've genuinely, I think, ever seen like it. I don't think I've seen anything like it. And Insight and JoeDeceives are just having their way with OpTic Texas. This, I don't have a clip of it. I didn't think I'd bother to bring it up, but JoeDeceives had a generational map here, 48 and 25. But this final rotation here, so JoeDeceives somehow gets lost in the back of P4. He stays alive for like half an hour. He sneaks through. Somehow they didn't spot him. He snuck through the back, got one. Dashy then somehow lost track of him, and Joe sits in the corner, gets another kill, gets another kill, gets another kill, and Joe's just alive in the back. No one's trying to trade him out, and then eventually Toronto get close enough to the hill, they break, Joe goes in the back door, they win the game then and there. It's like, you know, I couldn't believe my eyes. I genuinely couldn't believe my eyes. And that's not even the worst of it, really. Like, it was bad, but I genuinely think some of the worst plays came in the Search and Destroy. Look at this, KD rank in the league, 47th and 50th, in a 48-player league. This is, I mean, if you look, JoeDeceives is a great player, but could you imagine the world champions being in a position where JoeDeceives is shooting fish in a barrel from the top of the stairs here and is, I mean, look at him, he's laughing about it. The bottom right-hand corner, in the middle of your screen in seconds, Joe's like, what are these cats doing? I was actually cracking up about this. Like, okay, the first kill, whatever, Kenny goes down. And I know that there's nothing that Pred can really do in this situation, but the fact that he just sits in the corner and allows himself to get shot from above again, it's just a complete loseful moment. And the very next rounds, this was the worst of it, really. I mean, Pred is going to get cooked for this. And at the end of the day, it's deserved. I don't know what this guy is doing on the map. And as far as I'm concerned, he's opened himself up to this criticism because there was all this chatter. Oh, there's a sense of urgency, but there's not a sense of panic at all this. They were beating the Falcons and repeating this line in the interview. And I'm like, are you watching the same gameplay that I'm watching? Like, there's been reason for panic now for a month, and somehow OpTic didn't recognize it until it was too late, and now it's full panic stations, and they can't even get close to a map win. This round here, like, obviously they've just, you know, they're throwing away again, but Pred, he didn't even look. I don't get it. JoeDeceives comes up the left side. I mean, I swear I'm checking that. I'm looking at that, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I'm an ESPN analyst looking at this back, but Pred just goes to the head, he runs up and dies for free. They just gave him a first blood. Honestly, mind-blowing scenes. And then it was the control, and the control, they lost it again. They lost the first rounds. They got spawn trapped for a while. There was even a moment where, I mean, what I find funny about this, these screenshots from Octane's stream, you can just have a look at Octane's reaction on the right-hand side and just see like what his face is doing. I guess we can go through a couple of screenshots. Here's Octane number 1, and we get, you know, some other examples. This was a good one. You know, this was another good one. And, you know, obviously he's kind of smiling here because he recognizes how a collapse was this possible. We then get, you know, I think one of my favorite ones was this next one coming up here. Yeah, here we go. So, yeah, OpTic versus Toronto. This is the second round. This gunfight here, Kenny was in a gunfight. He slides out. Obviously, Octane's losing full because Kenny's, for some reason, gone for this challenge. He's getting chased down from 4 angles. He YYs in this gunfight, doesn't even get the kill in the end, gets shot in the back. And then this was probably my favourite Octane screenshot of the day, which is a moment where OpTic had the possibility to capture B. But instead of sending one guy further forward to try and block the spawns to help the teammate with the rotation, they stacks it with 2 people. Like, oh, great, stack the point. But You know, that's not really how you should be playing these situations, according to world champion Octane. It all collapses for them, and shortly afterwards it's GG. And look, Kenny's numbers, again, horrific, right? Like, Kenny's KD is some of the worst individual performances I've ever seen in competitive Call of Duty history. No doubt. But it's not just on Kenny. Like, if you swapped out Kenny here, I mean, maybe it's a change that the team needs. Obviously, something needs to change, right? But I just don't know where you go. I don't understand how it's possible to be this bad, frankly. I also just don't get what they do every week. I mean, I've made this point for a few weeks now, right? Like, what is the practice looking like? I said the thing at the start of the video. The best they probably looked was against FaZe. First series back. Yeah, they got 3-0s, but at least it was, you know, it looked like there was some promise there when Pred and Shotzzy get back in the groove, where they learn how to play with each other again. But it's just getting worse and worse. And it's not even an individual on the team that you can necessarily look at in detail. To such an extent that JoeDeceives, the excellent player that he is and the incredible talent that he is, just dropped a CDL record on OpTic Texas today. This was a record KD. We very rarely see anything higher than a 1.6. You know, 1.7 is incredibly rare. Anything over a 2 has very rarely happened in COD history. I think Octane had one a few years ago. But yeah, in the recent times anyway, JoeDeceives just dropped to 2.05, 86 in 42 in 3 maps. Insight had a 1.3, CleanX had a 1.3, and it was a 0.8, a 0.6, a 0.7, a 0.9. On the other side, the red carpet is out yet again. We'll do Boston versus FaZe tomorrow. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.